Um, okay, class. So today our circuit is a little more complicated since this is our last lesson, and so I'll show you how you can send multiple inputs from Arduino. Basically, I'll be using 2 ports and 1 button. So we'll be sending 3 inputs from Arduino to P5, and we'll be creating a very simple paint, or let's just say some stroke application, like a very beginner's paint application, in which the values of x and y's of the paint, your painting position is given by the 2 ports, and your button will say if you want to paint or not. So if your button is pressed, you can paint. If your button is not pressed, so we'll send some value. We'll send a value of 1 and 0. So if your value is 1, you will be able to paint. If your value is 0, you'll not be able to paint. So that is the basic logic. This is the circuit we'll be working on. It looks a bit complicated, but if you really think of it, it's not really. So here we have 2 ports and a button. So the button will be sending values to port 6 over here in the digital section. And the 2 ports will be sending values to A0 and A1. Like you can see over here, A0 and A1 is coming from the middle leg of the 2 ports. And each of these ports, like one side is connected to your positive, that is 5 volt, and the other side is connected to ground. So I can show you a schematic diagram so that it'll be a little more easier for you to construct, because here you can see that the wires are too messy. So this is the basic diagram that the circuit diagram that we are following. So previously what we had is we were just using 1 pot. So this is how you draw a variable resistor, right? So previously you just had a 5 volt and ground. So this is coming from the Arduino Uno board. So the 5 volt wire was connected to one side of the pot, one leg of the pot. The ground was connected to another leg of the pot, and this is the middle leg of the pot, which was connected to A0, right? Now we are just adding another pot in parallel, like this. The same thing. The left is still connected to 5 volt. The right leg is still connected to ground, and the middle leg is connected to A1. So you can get the idea of how you can making these 2 pots. And the third one, now we are adding a switch. So the switch is added such that, the switch has basically something like this, right? So how you are working on is, let's say one of these leg is connected to like in this case, I'm using 220 ohm resistor. And this resistor is connected to ground. Here you can see that one of the leg is connected to a resistor. I'm sorry, it's a little blurry. And this is ultimately connected to ground. Now this is just a way to show the diagram, but in actual it's something like this. It's connected to the ground, right? And the other leg, now you have to make sure like all the switches are not exactly similar to mine. You might have a little different type of switch, but this will give you an idea how you can change your wires to see if it works or not. So this leg, in my case, I'm connecting it to um, 5 volt, and internally it could be either this way or this way. The switch can be either this way, or this way, depending on what kind of switch you have. Okay, so in my case, this leg is connected to 6 in digital side of the Uno board. So what it basically means is, in my case, it's this one. So it's internally connected like this. So if I press the switch, it will make this connection, and the connection would be complete. You have a 5 volt, you have a ground, and you have something going to port 6. So the wire is it is complete connection, as you can see, and you have a resistor. However, if you unpress or if you release, then this connection will be broken. You can imagine there is no connection over here. So this is empty. Inside here, there's nothing happening. So here, your connection is broken. So you'll not be sending any inputs to port 6. So this is the basic idea. I know I made a mess over here, but I guess you got what I meant by this one, or I can make it more clear. So in my case, here you have on and off. So this could be either like this or like this. So if you press the button, it will go like this. If you release, the connection will be off. There will be no connection between two lines. And one of the lines is 5 volt. This is your 2 ohm resistor, so that your button won't burn out. Resistor, here you have ground, and here you are connecting to port 6. So if you press the button, it will go into this one, and the connection is complete. If you release the button, it will just be broken, and there is no connection. So that is our button. Make sure what kind of button you have. Most of the cases it will be the same. If not, maybe you want to change with the leg. Try connecting with this, because it might be something like this. So try connecting with this one to port 6 and see if it works. Okay, so now we got some idea of the circuit of switches. Now we'll see how we are programming, how we are sending multiple inputs, both digital and analog, to P5 from Arduino. Okay, and we'll see how we can make changes to our Arduino. Okay, now let's switch our screen to where is my Arduino? Okay, here's my Arduino. I've already written down the code, but I'll explain you what each of this does. So now this is my Arduino code. Let me connect my board, because I just have one USB port in my computer, because most of them are USB-C, and I just have one extension from USB-C to the regular USB 3. So I have to switch back and forth between my phone and the Arduino. So now my Arduino is connected. So here you can see that since I have 2 ports and 1 button. So I said it was connected to 7, but however, it's connected. Oh, I'm sorry, it's connected to 7. It's not connected to 6 because it's not pulse width. I'm really sorry about it. It's actually connected to 7. Because 7, if you see in the board, it doesn't have a pulse width. I don't know. I had pulse width in my mind when I was explaining in my notes. So okay, it's connected to button 7. And we have A0 and A1 for the pot. This is something same, serial begin, and then you have pin mode X pot, Y pot, and the button. So all of these are input. So we do analog reads for the 2 pots and digital read for the button. And here you can see this is the way you are preparing your data. So just pay attention to this one. Since we are sending 3 datas, now we are not using println anymore, right? Because next line basically means this is the next set of data. So in this case, println is written towards the end, and all of these are sent in the same line. So the first line is for the first one. The first integer value is for the X pot, coming from X pot. We separate it with comma separator. So just Pay attention that I'm using print instead of println in all of these, and at the end I'm adding println so that I can separate out one input to another from another. So export, comma, wipeout, comma, control button, and then println. So I verify it, I upload it, and in serial monitor you can see that these two values are coming from export, wipeout, and button. So as I press the button, it's 1. As I release the button, it's 0. Press 1, release 0. So you see that the button value changes, the last one. Now I'm twisting one of the port values. So let me change the port values. Here you can see that the port value changes. It's changed to 0 to the maximum value. So I'm changing the port values over here. The first and second value changes, right? Now the first value is changing, just the first value. The second value is constant. Just the first value changes. That's the port X. Now I'm changing port Y, right? And the button is just on and off as I press and release. So now you saw what is the data you are sending, right? And it's println. Let me make sure if you are actually seeing the screen. Okay, looks like you are not seeing the screen, so I'll do it once again. Sometimes this is very complicated. Okay, now I think you must be seeing the output screen. Okay, so here I'll explain it again. I'm sorry for that. So here is the three values of export, wipeout, and button. So button, as you press, it goes 1. As I release, 0, press 1, release 0, right? Now for export, as I change the value of export and wipeout, you see the value being changed, right? And here you can see that the values are changing of the ports as I rotate the knobs. Okay, so now that you know what kind of data you are sending, we are ready to move to our P5 code. Now let me again share the screen to my P5 code. Okay. Okay, so this is the P5 code. So here again, I have the code ready. I'll explain you however step by step, because since last time I explained it in a really detailed way, and we had pretty much a very long video, so I don't want to do the same things again, because most of the connection stuff is the same. If you can figure, if you learned it in the, I mean, I'll go over it once again, but very briefly. So here we are making a serial connection. So you need a variable serial, and we get the two values of X and Y's. Right now, previous X and previous Y, since I said that we are making some kind of very simple paint application. So if you remember in your paint application, while drawing the stroke, while drawing the line, you needed to store the previous X and Y values, right? So this is for that. And the button check is just to check if the button is pressed or not. So we are just getting the value of 1 and 0, which corresponds to true and false. So here is the new serial port object. You send your USB modem path the same port that your Arduino is connected, that you see in your serial port app, and you have your got data function, and you just create the canvas. Now, if you remember last time, oh, okay, here I have the background. So if you remember last time, I had the background color in the draw function, but right now I have it in the setup function, because since I'm painting, I don't want my background to be redrawn again and again, because if I do that, then you don't see your previous X and Y values and not a stroke, right? You'll not see a stroke. So for that reason, I have my background in the setup function. Make sure if you are making something similar to paint, or something that requires you to see all your interactions and not just frame by frame manner. So this is the way you achieve it. So your background is in the setup, and stroke width is just some width value I selected for my paint width. So got data. Now in got data, since last time we used read line, if you remember in last video, I used read line because I knew it was just one line and we just had one value in that line. So if you are just sending one value from P5, read line is okay. I can quickly show you what we had last time. So this is the heart, connecting the heart. So here I'm just using read line, right? However, right now I have read string until. So this reads the string until you receive a /n, which is given by our last println that we sent in the Arduino. So it goes through all the commas and everything till it reaches the /n. And if there is no current string, then it will just go outside got data because there is no data to work with. Now our data, we split the current string in terms of comma, because if you remember, we separated out the values of xpot, ypot, and button with a comma variable, right? With a comma sign. So you trim the current string so that there is no any space or anything like that, no any spaces. And then you split it. So you split the values based on comma. So your data is actually an array. So data will be basically something like this. So just in one frame, your data will have an array of, let's say, 100. This is your xpot value, this is your ypot value, and this is your button value. So your data will be something like this. It will be an array of these three numbers. Now, if that means the length of the data should always be 3, right? So we also make sure that if the length of the data is 3 or not. If it's not, then again, you simply return because that is not something we want here. Now, if we meet all of these base cases, then we separate out our X, Y, and the button check. Now we parse the integer. Now here is the mapping being done. Now, like I said, the pot, the potentiometer, it goes from 0 to 1023, right? We looked into it in some previous videos. So now we will map it with the 0 to width. So X goes, because X is something horizontal. So horizontally, the only space where you can paint is from 0 to your width of your canvas. So we'll map it accordingly. Similarly, the Y pot values, that is data 1, this value over here. Now this is just some random value I picked. This is not the only value you'll be getting. I think you got the idea, right? So the second value you'll map from 0 to 1023, that is its original range, to 0 to height, so that we can only draw within the canvas and it doesn't go out, the stroke doesn't go out. Now this is just something I just used for debugging. Now for debugging, to see your console, you can just log these data as X and Y and see how they are changing. This is just something I did it for debugging the code. I don't really need it right now, but you can, whenever you are debugging your code, you can use these values, and the value will be printed out in the console in your browser. So here data 2. Now data 2, data 0 is xpot, ypot, and this is the button check. Now the button value, if button is 1, your button check is true. Else, that means when your button is 0, then it's false. So it's a very straightforward idea. And so this is how you prepare your data for P5 based on the data you got from the Arduino. Now, in the draw function, again, it's very straightforward. So in the beginning, the stroke will be 0 at every draw. Now, if button check, so this is a condition. We just want to draw when the button is pressed. So once the button is pressed, we simply draw the line from X, Y to X previous, Y previous. Now, X previous and Y previous is, again, we replace it with current X and Y. and we fill it with black stroke. Okay, and we also have an alpha value of 1. And then there is no stroke because we just want, just 1 stroke. And then, yeah, we fill the screen with transparent white because we want like the current stroke to be black, while as we, the draw function is looped again and again, the rectangle, you can see that the rectangle covers the entire screen, right? Now the rectangle, it covers the screen such that the current stroke is highlighted as black, while the other strokes, the previous strokes, will be like faded away slowly because it'll be covered by this rectangle. You see it in action, like what happens, what I mean by this code. So again, basically what I'm doing is just drawing a line and replacing the previous x and y's to the current x and y value and filling up the rectangle by white color. So this is filling up the rectangle by white color and drawing the rectangle without any stroke. And the rectangle is basically covering the entire canvas. And since it has white color, so what it means is, like I said, all the previous strokes will be slightly blurred and the current stroke will be perfectly black. Now that's the idea of this code over here. The most important part is here, how you read the data using read string until, and how you split the data using the split and trim. The trim is just for trimming out if there's any spaces, and how you split based on comma. Now you must notice that my input data is splitted by, it's separated by comma. So if you choose to separate using some different punctuation marks, you have to use the same ones over here. This is an example. This is just some base case checks. And here is how you extract the data. Now in my case, I have X, Y's and button check. And here, if the button is checked, you simply draw a line. Now that we have this code ready, what I'll do is I'll connect my serial port app. I'll open my app and make sure that all the connections between P5 and Arduino is being done. I'll open my terminal, run my server, run my Python server, light server, perfectly good. So you run your server and then we'll see what we see in the browser, okay? So let me see my P5 control. Okay, so rescan, this is the one, right? Open, now it's connected. Once this is done, let me make sure that my P5 is actually where's my P5 over here? Oh, sorry, where's my, okay. Let me just make sure if this is exactly the same. Okay, this is exactly the same. Okay, now everything looks fine. I need to open my terminal. My terminal is actually already open and I simply used Python 3 minus HTTP server to run my server. And now let's move to the browser. Okay, this is the, I'll refresh it. Now as I change the values, let's see, why isn't it working? It was working fine before. let's see. You see, like by now, you must have noticed that you should keep on checking all your connections. This is a little bit of pain, but this is what we've got. So you have to check all the. Oh, yeah, I get it. Why I didn't. Now this is something. Okay, let me share this one for you too. So my serial monitor was open. Now this is something you don't want it to be open, because if your serial monitor is open, then your serial port connection won't take place. So I closed it. And now I'm gonna mm, I'm gonna open my serial port again. Okay, it's still connected. All looks good. Okay, here, okay, it's still connected to this one. Looks good. I think that was the error. So you have to make sure that your serial port, I mean the monitor, the serial monitor is closed. Now let's see if we can see anything in our window. Okay. Let's refresh it. Still nothing. Why is it so? So I'll check it once again from starting from my Arduino. Make sure, okay, I see why it's not happening, because my wire was not connected properly. One of my wire was out. So let me check my wires again. Yeah, make sure that all your connections are correct. That is very important. Okay, now let me start. Like, you have to make sure that your connections are all correct. In my case, one of these wires was out. I mean, it was not connected properly. So now it looks like everything is connected. Just to make sure, I'll go to the Arduino again and check with my serial monitor. Okay, I see the values being changed as I make changes to them. However, it looks like, okay, this wasn't connected properly. Okay, now both of it is working. I'll turn off my monitor, serial monitor. Oh, you were not able to see my serial monitor, but it was working. Now I'll my P5 serial control. I'll just close my P5 control for now. And then I'll open my P5 control again. Serial control app again. Allow. You have to, like, sometimes I know it's redoing things again, but you have to make sure that every connection, every part of it is actually working fine. So I connected it again. I'll check if the port is right in my Sublime. I'm pretty sure it's correct, but okay, so now everything should work fine, because it was working fine. Now again, back to the terminal. I'll cancel it. Run my server again. Back to Chrome. Hopefully this time it works. Now let me refresh it. Okay. So now this is some starting. This is what I meant. If I refresh it again, you see that the line is black and it goes grayer every time, like after every single frame. So that is because I'm covering up with some white, transparent, little bit of transparent window, and it makes it gray. So now as I turn my knob, like, I can change. If I just turn my X knob, it'll just change in, just horizontally. My Y knob, sorry, X knob vertically, Y knob horizontally. And if I turn both, I'm just painting out something. Like, I mean, it's not as easy. It's not easy at all to, like, something you use your mouse or, your trackpad to draw using this pod. But yes, I mean, this is just some example of what you could do now. And you can see that the current stroke is always the black one, while the rest becomes faint with time. So yeah, this is something, and everything is happening when if the button is being pressed. Once we are getting the value of 1. Once I release it, like now I released it, and it doesn't paint at all. So now it's starting to paint. So yeah, it's based on the button. Now, so yeah, so this is a very quick tutorial, and this is the last class. Now, so far, you know how to send multiple data from pod and I'm sorry, multiple data from Arduino to your P5 and use it and split the data and use the data appropriately, map the data based on your requirement. Like I mapped based on my height and width of the canvas. I might map the values in such a way. You can map the values to 0 to 255 and use it as some colors if you want. Maybe for some tone values, the values you need for different kind of tones, you can map it to them and use it accordingly. So yes, if you have any questions, just send me an email and we can work on it. Okay. So that's it. I'll show you my code once again, one by one, starting from Arduino, so that you will not have any problem with it. So this is my Arduino. It's very straightforward. The setup function, the loop. This is basically what you need in Arduino. You can pause and make notes on it. Now this is my P5. I have XY, previous XY, button check. I have setup function like this. And I have the got data function. Now you can put all those got errors, got list, and all those things, but for in the beginning phase when you are debugging, or you don't know what your port, how your port looks like, and for all those things. But for the most part, the things you need is got data and draw and setup function. If you are using images, then preload functions, which we also looked into in our last tutorial, last lesson. These are got data. Remember, read string until, splitting. These are the key things we learned. Parsing, mapping. And here is something we already know. Rectangle and align. So this is all. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and good luck.